Hi, and welcome to video number 3. We're going to talk about server and web hosting precautions. Now, before you invest money into web hosting and a server and so forth, the first thing you need to do is figure out how big of a launch you're going to have. Now, how big of a launch can determine on how many affiliates you have promoting, but also to predict it well, you need to figure out what kind of files you're providing in your launch and how big those files are. For example, if you're providing a video series and the video series is, let's say, 20 megabytes total, you're probably not going to have to worry too much about bandwidth costs and so forth. Now, just keep in mind that most web hosting companies will charge you once you surpass about 1,000 to 1,500 gigabytes of bandwidth, which is a lot. So if you're only operating and your product is only 20 to even 50 megabytes, then I don't think you really need to invest money into a dedicated server and so forth. But if you're like me and you launch a lot of video products and your video products come up to be about 500 megabytes to 1 gigabyte downloads, then in that case, you might want to pay close attention. So you need to figure out, okay, how big is your launch? Now, even if your launch is small, you need to make sure you put yourself on a good web hosting company. Put yourself on a bad web hosting company. What could happen to me will happen to you in the sense that they can terminate your account anytime. So figure out how big your launch is, what kind of files you're providing, and how big those files are. Now, there are two different directions that you could take. You could either use Amazon S3. Amazon S3 a lot of people use because you don't have to pay a lot of money except for bandwidth. Now, it could add up when you go into, let's say, the 1,000 gigabyte mark. As you can see here with this screenshot with Amazon S3, it's 0.14 cents per gigabyte. So, for example, that's standard storage. So let's say, for example, somebody downloads 1 gigabyte. That's 0.14, which is not a lot of money, but the web hosting company that I'm going to show you, if you don't go over like the 1,000, the 1 terabyte to 1.5 terabyte mark, it's actually cheaper than Amazon S3. But if you're the type of person that uses bandwidth on a big scale, then you want to use Amazon S3 because 1,000 times 0.140 equals $140. So I'm going to show you a site where you can just pay $90 a month and get a lot more bandwidth. Now, so Amazon S3 is an option for you if you want to use. Another option to use is servint.com or servant.net actually. So if you go to the site Servint, as you can see here, and you click on the products tab and you go directly to their enterprise VPS, which is their lowest packages. These are actually pretty good packages. As you can see, the first package, they give you 50 gigabytes of storage space and 1 terabyte of monthly transfer. That means you get 1,000 gigabytes of bandwidth. So if you're operating on anywhere from 20 to 100 megabytes, then you could get this package because you're not going to get a whole lot downloads unless you sell, 10,000 copies or so forth. Signature VPS is what I have, and I've used it to launch many launches, and it's done actually quite successful. The bottom line is, ask yourself, what do you need? If you don't need a lot, then go with the Essential VPS. If you do need a lot, then go with the Signature VPS. But one thing with Servant that I have loved over the years is their support. I email them 5 minutes later or even 2 minutes later, whatever I've emailed them, they've answered and they fix the problem. So, and the good thing about Servant is, let's say that you are on a essential VPS, but you find that a lot of people are downloading your products and you need more speed. You can always ask them to upgrade you to the signature VPS and so forth. So if you're launching, you can always go with the ultimate VPS, and then you find that you really don't need it. You can always ask them after the launch to, go from the ultimate VPS down to the essential VPS. So Servant is very flexible, and I've used well over 45 web hosting companies and found that many of them simply crash. And I've even run a web hosting company, and now I use Servant because when they add you to the server, they give you what we call a VPS. So if somebody else crashes their server, it doesn't crash your server. If you go with a site like HostGator.com and you go with their shared monthly or reseller accounts, if somebody crashes a server, then your site's going to go down. So that's why you want a VPS, not a shared account. Now that we have discussed that, let me talk about one last thing. Don't put everything into one basket or one server. The key to getting your server and keeping it live is to use multiple servers or multiple locations. One thing I've learned over the years is to have your sales page on one server, your images on another server, and the files that people are downloading on another server. Now, this might be a little bit overboard, but using this specific method has really helped me to have no crashes whatsoever at all. And we had one site that received almost 1 million hits, and it was a 6-figure launch. It was a very good launch, but we received almost 1 million hits within a week span. And doing so, we use the same method. The front sales page is on one server, images are another server, and downloadable files is on another server, and it all worked out. It was always up, and it was always up and running. And obviously, make sure you renew your domain name, because your domain has a lot to do with it as well. If your domain name expires, then you're screwed. So, in terms of web hosting, make sure you follow these precautions. Make sure that you email your hosting support and payment processor before the launch. And that's what I always do. I email the hosting support, tell them, hey, I'm having a product launch. So I just want to make you aware of that. And email your payment processor as well, whether it's ClickBank, whether it's PayPal. Tell them in advance, hey, I'm going to have a lot of sales come in, so it doesn't shock you or anything like that. Because PayPal, I found, if you launch a product and they see a spike in your profits and so, they might lock your account. But usually nowadays when I tell them that, they put a note in there, so if there is a spike, they know why. So make sure you follow these guidelines, your web hosting, make sure your web hosting support knows, make sure that they email you fast if you do choose to use another web hosting company. But be aware that many web hosting companies, especially the ones that promise unlimited plans, I would highly likely stay away from those web hosting companies, because when you're putting all your eggs in that web hosting company and you trust that web hosting company to keep you up, you need to make sure they're legit. And if they're offering you all these unlimited plans, I'd highly recommend that you stay away from those companies. So with that said, this specific advice should help you and should help prevent any web hosting crashes in the future. Not exactly guaranteed, but if you use Servant, I guarantee you that their support is phenomenal.